there were 4 overall, which is a pretty nice number for a team that, again, just hasn't had that many draft picks here in the last, 15 years or so. Did see one go on Friday night, and I'm not surprised that this guy went on Friday night. I'm just kind of surprised that he went this high. You had Omar Norman Lott sneaking into the back of the second round at number 63 overall, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. And of course, he is joining former Tennessee offensive lineman Trey Smith there. And, more than anything, I'm just glad he's going to a winning organization, one that has a proven track record in the playoffs. And I think doing that to a degree really helps you get noticed in the league more so than obviously playing for losing organizations. And I say that because of the success that Trey Smith has had in Kansas City, because in 2021, obviously a lot of teams passed up on him for 6 rounds basically because they knew about the health problems that he had while he was here at Tennessee, specifically the one instance, I believe that was his sophomore year with the blood clots developing in his lungs. But anyway, they took a gamble on him in the 7th round, and it's paid off tremendously. They love him in the organization. He got franchise tagged 1 year after his rookie deal ended. So obviously a guy that fell pretty far, and they've been able to turn him into one of the more desirable guards in the league whenever he leaves Kansas City. And I think the same could be true for Omar Norman Lott at DT. He was good here at Tennessee. Not a guy that I necessarily thought jumped out at you when he was playing on the field all the time, but I think now when you pair him up with guys like Chris Jones on that defensive front for Kansas City, you're really going to see some things from him that'll enhance his game. It's a guy that will get better because he has better players around him, I feel like.
Yeah, and to mention too, with Chris Jones being in the locker room, yeah, that'll help him be able to, because eyes are going to be on Chris Jones most of the time when blockers are lined up across from him. So of course, he's going to be able to get past these blockers easier with him being there, but also like the experience that he could learn from the locker room, like being able to perfect his craft and everything. I think a lot of these veterans in the NFL, if they're willing to teach, they might be the best teachers out there because they're in the modern game. They know how things work. I don't know. I think it'd be good for him to learn from him. And then plus, like, the Chiefs have other talented players too, like Bolton on the the linebacker and everything. And he's really stepped up as of late. So I mean, I think it's a good fit for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and a couple other nice edge rushers too on that team. Because you got Mike Dana is a name that's familiar. George Karlaftis,
yes,
really good on that edge. Charles Omenihu, another guy that's been around in the league for a minute. So you got some other talent that surrounds him that can really help him. It's like having a good basketball team on the defensive line. Sometimes it's like one or two guys maybe draw a lot of attention, so the other two really benefit from it.
Yeah. So in the 4th round of the NFL draft, Dante Thornton got picked up. And I know that's a guy that we've mentioned a couple times. And I think last week on the show, you briefly mentioned the possibility of him going to the Raiders. And of course, that's where he ended up going at pick 108. What's your thoughts on Dante Thornton going to the Raiders and how he fits into that system?
Yeah, so I did mention that. You're correct. But not at all at where the mock had him projected, though. This one had him going down at 213 to the Raiders, which I found a little bit surprising because I don't know why, but like the last week before the draft, they had him going anywhere from borderline day 2 to day 3 guy all the way down to like the 7th or 6th round, which is a little bit of a surprise. But anyway, I do like that he got drafted by the Raiders. I know the organization is a little bit of a mess, has been for several years now. He'll have Geno Smith throwing him the ball this first year, if I'm not mistaken. Which that's just kind of a bridge year for him, I guess, as a receiver and for the Raiders organization, which they kind of just had last year, which is a bit odd. But, and I mentioned this last week, right? You don't have many wide receivers competing for catches in that group. It's Brock Bowers who's the best receiver on that team, and he had a great rookie season, obviously, but the best wide receivers on that team, at least last season, in terms of productivity, were Jacoby Myers and Trey Tucker, who, I mean, no disrespect, those are two guys you could jump in front of to get more targets if you wanted to. And they also drafted Jack Besh this year from TCU, which I didn't watch a whole lot of TCU football this year, but I know they were pretty strong offensively. Jack Besh was also the guy that lost the opening fumble, or that lost the fumble on the opening kickoff down there in Baton Rouge against Tennessee in 2022, because he transferred from LSU to TCU. I do remember that. Now, as far as Thornton's fit in the system, he's an interesting receiver, because usually when you see 6'5" on a receiver, you're like, okay, this is a guy that can go up and get a 50-50 ball. That's his main purpose. But he's got obviously more twitch than the average 6'5" receiver. The guy runs a 4.3 40, which is something they like. They really, really like their speed there in Las Vegas. I mean, it's why you saw them draft Henry Ruggs a couple years ago. Really, really fast wide receiver. When he was still playing, obviously, it's an unfortunate situation that happened with him off the field. But all that to say, the Raiders are a team that's desperate for receivers, kind of like another team that I happen to root for in the NFL. And I think overall this is a good pick by them. It's just with Thornton, it never felt like he had his he never reached his full potential here at Tennessee, I don't think. And a lot of that has to do with injuries, right? Because obviously the first year he had that injury against Mizzou and really wasn't able to come into his own until the Alabama or Kentucky games, just because he was behind Brew McCoy and Squirrel White in the pecking order. And then this year, again, injuries did kind of limit him a little bit. He was it him that got dead-legged against Arkansas by either Brew McCoy or Squirrel White? Because I know there was a situation on the Tennessee sideline in the second half where like one guy was getting up and they like both hurt each other, and it's like, gosh, we can't have this happen. But I do believe there was at least one or two instances this year where he was not 100%. Hopefully that changes for him in the NFL. And again, that's the beauty of the NFL too, right? Is like some of these guys who don't really look like studs in college, they go on to have like 5 or 6 really nice years in the NFL. Like one that comes to mind, at least for me, has got to be Arian Foster. He was associated with fumbles when he was here at Tennessee. He goes undrafted. The Texans decide to give him a call, sign him as an undrafted free agent, and he had 4 or 5 really nice seasons with the Texans, which is, at least now, maybe not so much then, but that's a pretty nice run for a running back, I would say.
Oh yeah. I mean, he was like top 5 in the league for like a couple of years, maybe even led in rushing at one point. But I'm not 100% certain on that. But I mean, the Raiders getting Thornton, first of all, I know the Raiders love speed. That was Al Davis's thing all the time. He always wanted to take a good, quick player. Well, they got it this draft, and he's 6'5", like you mentioned. I like it. I mean, it fits the Raider way, the way that they've always wanted to run the organization. And on top of that, they don't have much depth at receiver, like you mentioned. So, I mean, I would imagine he's going to get playing time in his rookie year and everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was like the 3rd leading receiver on the team. I mean, maybe it's too quick to call, but I mean, definitely Brock Bowers is going to be number 1, I would imagine, as long as he doesn't get hurt. And then after that, I mean, I think things are wide open. I mean, he could step in there and even start for all we know coming into this season. So I think that's a great for Dante Thornton, but even greater for the Raiders to get a receiver like that in the 4th round, especially when they need it. Great that it slid to them.
Yeah, and again, I don't know what Jack Besh's ceiling is at all, but he's a guy that obviously they felt good enough to draft in the second or third round. So they just got a couple receivers and are just testing their options. It feels like so. I think both of those guys have a chance to overtake, say, Trey Tucker or Jacoby Myers because I mean, Jacoby Myers for a lot of years, and this is just a fantasy football brain thing for me, but he's just that guy you look for on the waiver wire after a while. Because like, there's a couple receivers like him and Jarvis Landry for like 4 or 5 years were just two guys that I would just, if I was ever in need of a wide receiver, I could depend on them being on the waiver wire, and I would go and get them. But yeah, I think that's a system that Dante Thornton should hopefully be able to succeed in, and next year, I would imagine that the Raiders will be looking for a quarterback, and they'll try and get a guy that's a little bit more of a permanent fixture than the last couple of guys that they've had in there, and Gardner Minshew, and then I guess this season Geno Smith.
Yeah, I don't think the Raiders have really had a steady quarterback since Derek Carr, and
If
then
you'd even
like
call him steady, I know he was
even if
there
you,
for a long time, but he was inconsistent.
yeah, well, yeah, actually, fair point. I mean, yeah, and then before that, the Raiders really didn't have much outside of I think like Carson Palmer played there briefly. So yeah, I don't know. Geno Smith probably not going to be the guy much longer, I would imagine, considering his age and everything. But I mean, he could probably coach up Dante Thornton a little bit too and teach him a little bit because like outside of the receivers, quarterback's probably the best guy to talk to getting things straightened out and to get ready for the league. But yeah, and then in addition, in the same round, probably the pick that a lot of Vols fans are really excited to see, Dylan Sampson goes in the 4th round to the Browns, and he will be reunited with Cedric Tillman, and of course the guy that we mentioned earlier today, Shador Sanders.
That's not a reunion. That's
Well, no,
just
not a
a
reunion.
meeting. That's a
Just a
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah. Well, if you wanted to say reunited with the Haslams, then yes, he is being reunited with the Haslams. Little Jim Haslam, of course, the owner of the Cleveland Browns. He will be competing for carries with Quinshon Judkins, who, of course, started his career at Ole Miss and then transferred to Ohio State this past season. And maybe he's a guy that, I don't know, he's like the third down back for them this year. With Judkins, I don't necessarily know if I see him being an every down back, I guess you could say, just because that's two guys that you're drafting out of college, and I think both of them are terrific running backs. Obviously, what Judkins was doing at Ole Miss before he transferred to Ohio State and split carries with Travion Henderson, he was being thrown around in conversations with guys like Emmitt Smith and Herschel Walker, just in terms of the fact that he's a guy that was doing things that we just hadn't seen freshmen in the SEC do it a long time at running back. Obviously Dylan Sampson this year, Offensive Player of the Year in the SEC. And it's funny, we were talking about Arian Foster earlier, another guy that had some fumble issues at Tennessee this year. It's okay to say it. He definitely had some fumble problems this year at Tennessee. And also, you mentioned how I was discussing that Thornton was originally linked to the Raiders at one point in time. Sampson was linked to the Browns as well before the draft in a few different projections. And not a whole lot of running backs on that roster before they got both of those guys this season. Now, as far as a fit goes, obviously, yes, you're going to see the field a lot. Who is handing him the ball? It's one of 5 guys.
That's the biggest question.
It's an interesting quarterback room. You've got we try to dodge Shador Sanders all night, and we just can't because a Tennessee player has to play with him this year, or at least we think has to play with him. They have 5 quarterbacks on that roster. You can only keep 3 in the regular season. So that means either Deshaun Watson, Kenny Pickett, Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, or Shador Sanders is handing the ball to Dylan Sampson next season.
Well, I imagine one of those rookies are going to have to get cut, right? Like,
yeah.
If there's only 3 quarterbacks allowed on the NFL roster, I mean, I'm sure, is Deshaun Watson, is he still on contract with them?
Yeah, but they're doing everything they can to try and get rid of him.
Well, if that's the case, I imagine they get rid of him as soon as the season's over with, and then Joe Flacco. I mean, he's like 40, I think
He
40
did
years
ball
old.
last time he played at Cleveland, though.
He did, but I feel like it was like one of those things where it's like you're preparing for a guy the entire season, and then like he goes down at the injury, and then the backup quarterback comes in. You don't have film on him. I mean, I know he played for the Ravens back in the day, but he ain't like who he was when he was going to the Super Bowl and everything like that. So, I mean, yeah, he had some good games. I feel like it was more so they weren't expecting him to do good during those times. But I mean, Joe Flacco could be a guy to like help bring up some of these young quarterbacks, but I don't know if you'd waste a roster spot on a 40-year-old.
No. And then I'm just thinking like Kenny Pickett, the book has been written on him. We just know he's not a great NFL quarterback. The definition of lightning in a bottle in college. And honestly, I like the Dylan Gabriel pick. I thought he was a better college quarterback than Shedeur Sanders ever was. I just think, the size may be a little bit of a problem there. And I mean, you could say the same thing about Dylan Sampson. He's a very undersized running back, at least it feels like, just in the NFL. But it's just a fascinating situation the Browns have created. They always seem to do this. They can't get out of their own way. So I'm happy that Dylan Sampson is going to get to play a lot this year. But I just that organization just loves making itself a mystery every single year.
Yeah, and I think it's funny how they drafted 2 running backs and then drafted 2 quarterbacks too. Like they weren't confident
Yeah.
enough
What
of.
they needed to draft 2 running backs though, honestly.
Well,
Like
yeah, yeah.
they like cuz I forget who they had on the roster before then because it was I mean just a couple of nobodies if we're being honest. Like Nick Chubb was in free agency. Okay, so they had Jerome Ford on the roster who was basically the replacement for Chubb while he was out. Not a stellar option. And then they had Pierre Strong Jr. from South Dakota State, third-year man, who I have never heard of in my life.
Yeah.
So they needed the 2 running backs. They did not need 2 quarterbacks.
No. Not at all. But the Cleveland Browns are going to Cleveland Browns.